This deserves all the attention it can get, and it's being whitewashed to this day. Again, it shows the ignorance and contempt of the electorate liberals depend on. This is what readers got when they clicked on the Democrats.org History tab. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. This revisionism is spewed by liberals on a daily basis, and seeing how the media and other so-called watchdogs are so apparently ignorant of American history, Democrats continue to lie through their teeth to their constituents via academia and entertainment to our kids. While I've only scratched the surface of civil rights history, remember, Democrats claim they are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. October 13, 1858, during the Lincoln-Douglas debates, U.S. Senator Stephen Douglas, Democrat of Illinois, said, "If you desire Negro citizenship, if you desire to allow them to come into the states and settle with the white man, if you desire them to vote on an equality with yourselves, and to make them eligible to office, to serve on juries, and to adjudge your rights, then support Mr. Lincoln and the Black Republican Party, who are in favor of the citizenship of the Negro." For one, I am opposed to Negro citizenship in any and every form. I believe this government was made on the white basis. I believe it was made by white men, for the benefit of white men, and for the posterity forever. And I am in favor of confining citizenship to white men, men of European birth and descent, instead of conferring it upon Negroes, Indians, and other inferior races. Douglas became the Democrat Party's 1860 presidential nominee. April 16, 1862, President Lincoln signed the bill abolishing slavery in the District of Columbia. In Congress, almost every Republican voted yes, and most Democrats voted no. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. July 17, 1862. Over unanimous Democrat opposition, the Republican Congress passed the Confiscation Act, stating that slaves of the Confederacy shall be forever free. April 8, 1864, the 13th Amendment banning slavery passed the U.S. Senate with 100% Republican support, 63% Democrat opposition. January 31st, 1865, the 13th Amendment banning slavery passed the U.S. House with unanimous Republican support and intense Democrat opposition. November 22, 1865, Republicans denounced the Democrat legislature of Mississippi for enacting the Black Codes, which institutionalized racial discrimination. February 5, 1866, U.S. Representative Thaddeus Stevens, Republican of Pennsylvania, introduced legislation opposed successfully by Democrat President Andrew Johnson to implement the 40 acres and a mule relief by distributing land to former slaves. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. March 27, 1866, Democrat President Andrew Johnson vetoed the law granting voting rights to blacks. May 10, 1866, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Republicans' 14th Amendment, guaranteeing due process and equal protection of the law to all citizens. 100% of Democrats voted no. June 8, 1866, the United States Senate passed the Republicans' 14th Amendment, guaranteeing due process and equal protection of the law to all citizens. 94% of Republicans voted yes, and all Democrats voted no. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. July 16, 1866, the Republican Congress overrides Democrat President Andrew Johnson's veto of legislation protecting the voting rights of blacks. March 30, 1868, Republicans begin the impeachment trial of Democrat President Andrew Johnson, who declared, "This is a country for white men, and by God, as long as I am president, it shall be a government of white men." September 12, 1868, civil rights activist Tunis Campbell and 24 other blacks in the Georgia Senate, all Republicans, were expelled by the Democrat majority and would be later reinstated by the Republican Congress. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. October 7, 1868, Republicans denounced the Democrat Party's national campaign theme, "This is a white man's country, let white men rule." October 22, 1868, while campaigning for re-election, Representative James Hines, Republican of Arkansas, was assassinated by Democrat terrorists who organized as the Ku Klux Klan. Hines was the first sitting congressman to be murdered while in office. December 10, 1869, Republican Governor John Campbell of the Wyoming Territory signed the first in the nation law granting women the right to vote and hold public office. February 3, 1870, after passing the House with 98% Republican support and 97% Democrat opposition, the Republicans' 15th Amendment was ratified, granting the vote to all Americans, regardless of race. February 25, 1870, Hiram Rhodes Revels, Republican of Mississippi, becomes the first black to be seated in the United States Senate. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. May 31, 1870, President Ulysses S. Grant signed the Republicans' Enforcement Act, providing stiff penalties for depriving any American's civil rights. June 22, 1870, the United States Department of Justice, the inspiration of Ohio Representative William Lawrence, was created to safeguard the civil rights of blacks against Democrats in the South. September 6, 1870, women voted in Wyoming in the first election after women's suffrage was signed into law by Republican Governor John Campbell. February 1, 1871, Representative Jefferson Franklin Long, Republican of Georgia, became the first black to speak on the floor of the United States House of Representatives. February 28, 1871, the Republican Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1871, providing federal protection for black voters. April 20, 1871, the Republican Congress enacted the Enforcement Act of 1870 and 1871, also known as the Ku Klux Klan Act, outlawing Democrat Party-affiliated terrorist groups which oppressed blacks and those who supported them. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. October 10, 1871, following warnings by Philadelphia Democrats against black voting, Republican civil rights activist Octavius Catto was murdered by a Democrat Party operative. His military funeral was attended by thousands. October 18, 1871. After violence against Republicans in South Carolina, President Ulysses S. Grant deployed U.S. troops to combat Democrat Ku Klux Klan terrorists. November 18, 1872. Susan B. Anthony was arrested for voting after boasting to Elizabeth Cady Stanton that she had voted for the Republican ticket straight. January 17, 1874. Armed Democrats seized the Texas state government, ending Republican efforts to racially integrate. September 14, 1874. Democrat white supremacists seized the Louisiana State House in an attempt to overthrow the racially integrated administration of Republican Governor William Kellogg. 27 were killed. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. March 1, 1875, the Civil Rights Act of 1875, guaranteeing access to public accommodations without regard to race, was signed by Republican President Ulysses S. Grant and passed with 92% Republican support, 100% Democrat opposition. January 10, 1878. Senator Aaron Sargent, Republican of California, introduced the Susan B. Anthony Amendment for women's suffrage. The Democrat-controlled Senate defeated it 4 times before the election of a Republican House and Senate that guaranteed its approval in 1919. February 8, 1894, the Democrat Congress and Democrat President Grover Cleveland joined to repeal the Republicans' Enforcement Act, which had enabled blacks to vote. January 15, 1901, Republican Booker T. Washington protested the Alabama Democrat Party's refusal to permit voting by blacks. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. May 29, 1902, Virginia Democrats implemented a new state constitution condemned by Republicans as illegal, reducing black voter registration by almost 90%. February 12, 1909. On the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, black Republicans and women's suffragists Ida Wells and Mary Terrell co-founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. May 21, 1919, the Republican House passed a constitutional amendment granting women the right to vote, with 85% of Republicans and only 54% of Democrats in favor. In the Senate, 80% of Republicans voted yes, and almost half of the Democrats voted no. August 18, 1920, the Republican-authored 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote became part of the United States Constitution. 26 of the 36 states needed to ratify had Republican-controlled legislatures. January 26, 1922, the House passed a bill authored by Representative Leonidas Dyer, Republican of Missouri, making lynching a federal crime. Senate Democrats blocked it by filibuster. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. June 2, 1924, Republican President Calvin Coolidge signed a bill passed by the Republican Congress granting U.S. citizenship to all Native Americans. October 3, 1924, Republicans denounced 3-time Democrat presidential nominee William Jennings Bryan for defending the Ku Klux Klan at the 1924 Democratic National Convention. June 12, 1929, First Lady Lou Hoover invited the wife of Black Representative Oscar DePriest, Republican of Illinois, to tea at the White House, sparking protests by Democrats across the country. August 17, 1937, Republicans organized opposition to former Ku Klux Klansman and Democrat U.S. Senator Hugo Black, who was later appointed to the United States Supreme Court by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Black's Klan background was hidden until after his confirmation. June 24, 1940, the Republican Party platform called for the integration of the armed forces. For the balance of his terms in office, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Democrat, refused to order it. August 8, 1945, Republicans condemned Democrat Harry Truman's surprise use of the atomic bomb in Japan. It began 2 days after the Hiroshima bombing, when former Republican President Herbert Hoover wrote that the use of the atomic bomb, with its indiscriminate killing of women and children, revolts my soul. May 17, 1954, Earl Warren, California's 3-term Republican governor and 1948 Republican vice presidential nominee, was nominated Chief Justice and delivered the landmark decision Brown v. Board of Education. November 25, 1955, Republican President Dwight D. Eisenhower's administration banned racial segregation of interstate bus travel. March 12, 1956, 97 Democrats in Congress condemned the Supreme Court's Brown v. Board of Education decision and pledged, the Southern Manifesto, to continue segregation. June 5, 1956, Republican federal judge Frank Johnson ruled in favor of the Rosa Parks decision striking down the blacks in the back of the bus law. November 6, 1956, African-American civil rights leaders Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph Abernathy voted for Republican Dwight Eisenhower for president. September 9, 1957, President Eisenhower signed the Republican Party's 1957 Civil Rights Act. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. September 24, 1957. Sparking criticism from Democrats, including Senators John F. Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson, President Eisenhower deployed the 82nd Airborne Division to Little Rock, Arkansas, to force Democrat Governor Orville Faubus to integrate their public schools. May 6, 1960. President Eisenhower signed the Republican Civil Rights Act of 1960, overcoming a 125-hour round-the-clock filibuster by 18 Senate Democrats. May 2, 1963, Republicans condemned Bull Connor, the Democrat Commissioner of Public Safety in Birmingham, Alabama, for arresting over 2,000 black school children marching for their civil rights. September 29, 1963, Governor George Wallace, Democrat of Alabama, defied an order by United States District Judge Frank Johnson, appointed by President Dwight Eisenhower, to integrate Tuskegee High School. June 9, 1964, Republicans condemned the 14-hour filibuster against the 1964 Civil Rights Act by United States Senator and former Ku Klux Klansman Robert Byrd, Democrat of West Virginia, who served in the Senate until his death in 2010. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. June 10, 1964. Senate Minority Leader Everett Dirksen, Republican of Illinois, criticized the Democrat filibuster against the 1964 Civil Rights Act and called on Democrats to stop opposing racial equality. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was introduced and approved by a majority of Republicans in the Senate. The act was opposed by most Southern Democrat senators, several of whom were proud segregationists, one of them being Al Gore Sr. President Lyndon B. Johnson relied on Illinois Senator Everett Dirksen, Republican leader of Illinois, to get the act passed. August 4, 1965. Senate Leader Everett Dirksen, Republican of Illinois, overcame Democrat attempts to block the 1965 Voting Rights Act. 94% of Republicans voted for the landmark civil rights legislation, while 27% of Democrats opposed it. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, abolishing literacy tests and other measures devised by Democrats to prevent blacks from voting, was signed into law. A higher percentage of Republicans voted in favor. February 19, 1976, President Gerald Ford formally rescinded President Franklin D. Roosevelt's notorious Executive Order 9066, authorizing the internment of over 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II. September 15, 1981, President Ronald Reagan established the White House Initiative on historically black colleges and universities to increase black participation in federal education programs. June 29, 1982, President Ronald Reagan signed a 25-year extension of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. August 10, 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, compensating Japanese Americans for the deprivation of their civil rights and property during the World War II internment ordered by FDR. November 21, 1991, President George Herbert Walker Bush signed the Civil Rights Act of 1991 to strengthen federal civil rights legislation. August 20, 1996, a bill authored by U.S. Representative Susan Molinari, Republican of New York, to prohibit racial discrimination in adoptions, part of the Republicans' Contract with America, became law. Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. Bill Clinton says Robert Byrd, joined the Ku Klux Klan to help him get elected. Just a fleeting association, nothing to see here. And let's not forget the words of liberal icon Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood. The minister's work is also important, and he should be trained, perhaps by the Federation, as to our ideals and the goals that we hope to reach. We do not want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members. December 21st, 2018. President Donald Trump signed the First Step Act. This legislation reformed sentencing laws that have wrongly and disproportionately harmed the African American community. The First Step Act gives nonviolent offenders the chance to re-enter society as productive, law-abiding citizens. Now, states across the country are following our lead. America is a nation that believes in redemption. So the next time any Democrat claims they've been supportive of civil rights and have been so all along, ask them to explain their past. "We've grown" is not going to cut it, considering they continue to lie about their past to this day. Only a willing fool, and there are quite a lot of them out there, would accept and recite the nonsensical. One bright sunny day, Democrats and Republicans just up and decided to switch political positions, and they cite the Southern strategy as the uniform knee-jerk retort. Even today, it never takes long for a Democrat to play the race card purely for political advantage. Thanks to the Democrat Party, blacks have the distinction of being the only group in the United States whose history is a work in progress. In 2010, the Democrat Party website received a facelift, and the erroneous statements regarding their so-called civil rights advocacy was removed. That is until 2020. For more than 200 years, our party has led the fight for civil rights. Take a look at some of our accomplishments, and you'll see why we're proud to be Democrats. From America's beginnings to today, people have turned to Democrats to meet our country's most pressing challenges and pave the way for a future that lifts up all Americans. The lie has returned for the benefit of the ignorant with careful nuance.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race. And what kind of alibi do they come up with? They try and pass the buck to the Dixiecrats. Now, back during the days when you were blind, deaf, and dumb, ignorant, politically immature, naturally you went along with that. But today, as your eyes come open and you develop political maturity, you're able to see and think for yourself. And you can see that a Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat in disguise.
As in any lie, the real fear for the liar is that one day the truth will come out and what the repercussions will be. Democrats have been using blacks for political gain for decades, and what's been the result? Inferior schools, thus low employment opportunities, thus high crime neighborhoods. There is nothing happening in the black community that liberals would allow to happen in theirs. When it does, they freak out. There is little in the history of the Democrat Party that shows me that they have the best interests of blacks at heart. Back in the day, they created the Klan to kill us. Now they use Planned Parenthood to do it legally. A proud history indeed.